Greetings YouTube, welcome to my latest build. You'll note I didn't say weapons build because this isn't a weapons build. I've been requested to make a couple of custom clamps, and these are the materials I will hopefully be using to make them. This is going to become the body of the clamps. I'm hoping to hold these hinges on with these rivets. Now I'm not 100% sure these rivets are going to work for me because these rivets are an 1/8 inch, so I've got a 9/64 drill bit, which is just a smidge wider than an 1/8 inch. An 1/8 inch is 0.125, and these are 0.140. It's 15th difference, and that should make it easy to fit it in there. But I'm not sure if these rivets will work with these holes, which are bigger. I haven't measured them yet, so I'm actually going to do a test run where I will actually mock up what I need to rivet, and then just sacrifice a rivet to see if it actually holds two objects together that have a hole this size and a hole that size. Because if it doesn't, I have some piano hinge which I can then use to make my own hinges, which would be virgin steel, so I could just drill holes anywhere I want to of any size I want, and I would obviously be using the same drill bit. I had originally wanted to use a couple of knobs on them, like turning, stereo style knobs on them. I didn't have access to those. They are carried on the Home Depot website, but apparently they're not in their physical store. So I just grabbed some wing nuts as a temporary stand-in. I'm going to need some springs. I picked these up. These hopefully will be functioning as a couple of clamps for the whole process, because I have to get this very precisely assembled, and these are hopefully going to allow me to pin something in place long enough to get a hole drilled. And I'll be using 2 of these carriage bolts. I don't know which size I needed. I didn't know if I needed 1 inch or 1.5 inch, so I picked up 2 of each. They're very inexpensive, and if I don't use them here, I'm sure I'll use them somewhere else. And again, this is going to be the body of the hinge and the body of the clamps. Keep looking at this and saying hinge. So I'm going to be using 1 inch sections. So I'm going to be cutting 1 inch hunk out of this, and then some more down here. I'm going to take this off first so I don't have this in my way, and the rest of this I will recycle for something else. Now I can't use this section in here because I'm actually going to want to cut this section of the channel lock to that length. So this is right here. So it would be very tricky to monkey with that. I don't know. I may give it a shot and see what happens. But to get that exactly where I want it may be very tricky to do. And I need them to be as close to exactly the same size as each other. So I need 4 pieces of this. Each clamp's going to take 2 pieces, and I need them to become matching sets. If the 2 clamps are not perfectly matching each other, I'm less concerned with the 2 halves of each clamp perfectly matching themselves, and that's important. And this is going to be an exercise in fitting one thing to the next, and then fitting that to the next, and trying to bring everything together, literally and figuratively, so that everything lines up the way I want it to line up. This is going to be a degree of precision that I am not normally used to. Most of my aesthetic is post-apocalyptic, and most of the time I have a level of wiggle room that I'm not going to have in this particular project. And I did get these special rivets here. These are much smaller than I normally use. They're actually half the scale I normally use. I'm a big believer in 1/4 inch hinges, and these are 1/8 inch hinges, and they're only a 1/4 inch long, because I'm trying to save as much space as possible, because I don't want these to be interfering with the operation of the clamps when I'm done. But these will make my life easier, because these fasteners are good for going in from one side, and then you pin, and once you've actuated them, they're locked in place, and you don't have to worry about trying to get things lined up from 2 sides, and you don't have something that's going to come apart. These are, you shoot them once and you're done, but they're aluminum, so if you do have to remove them, it's just a matter of drilling them out. It's not impossible to do. I've done it myself before. Alrighty, so the first thing I'm going to need to do is get this stuff out of my way, because I don't need any of this stuff at the minute, and start working on this. I'm going to want to get this thing off and save it. I may be able to find a use for that in the future. So my goal is to grind these bits off here, and then hopefully knock the whole thing free. I've had some success with that in the past. I actually have a number of these in my collection at the minute. I have a project I have in mind for 2 of them, but at the moment this is just going to be extraneous, so I want it gone. In fact, I think that may have been part of another thing I did recently, where I had to, I think this was where the point where this attached to a larger piece of bed frame, and I cut them off so that I could reuse this section, which is what it's about to happen now. Okay, so let's start going, and let's see if I can actually produce the degree of precision I'd like. Alright, I don't think I've ever shown you me using my rigid chop saw before, so we're going to give that a shot. And I'm actually going to try cutting this section here and seeing if I can take advantage of that width or not, and if I can't, again, I've got lots of material to work with, so it's not big of a deal. So now I should warn you that when I turn this on, the lights are going to dim. This draws a lot of power. This does a wonderful job of cutting. Now we're going to cool this off a little. Yep. So now I can actually touch it without having to worry about getting burned. So now I'm going to set this up. I may have to like inch that around, figure out where I want to make the next cut, and obviously this has to get deburred, and I'll be doing that on my belt sander right there. In fact, I can do that right now. And that's just a Harbor Freight 1-inch belt sander, nothing special, but it does a really nice job at deburring my parts. And now I'm going to have to get my vernier calipers out and see how parallel these things are. I'd like to see how parallel they are, because if they are parallel enough, then I'll set this up and I will do 3 more of these. Now I'm not going to have to worry about this burr right here, because I'm going to come in here with my angle grinder and cut off this section in line with that, so I'll have to then deburr that section and clean it up after. But at the minute, we're going to see how well this turns out. So I got to make 3 more of these things with any luck. Well, didn't work out the way I wanted. What a shock. I couldn't get the notches that were already in there to work out for me, because I forgot that I had to make these things wider than the hinges, then to realize that these hinges are not going to work. Why are those hinges not going to work? Let me get a pointy thing and I can show you. Make my life easier if I have a pointy thing. I've got a pointy thing in here somewhere. Come on, I know you're in here. Where the hell are you? I'm just going to dump my stuff out so I can find a pointy thing. Here we go. Here's my pointy thing. Alright, so these are next to each other. Okay? So if I put them like that, that means when I fold this, since I'm going to have something proud from this surface, it would interfere with each other. So what I ideally need to do is put a fastener here and here, rivets, and then put on the other side, the rivets will be here and here. That way they will not interfere with each other. In addition, I don't think I could make this work with the rivets I have unless I put the rivet head on the inside, which would make the outside look ugly. I want the clean rivet head on the outside. So if I drill the same hole through the steel and through this piano hinge, I can get that. And this piano hinge is big enough that I'll be able to get 2 holes at a diagonal to each other. Now you notice I've got these things 2 marked. These are going to be the faces. This is going to be where this hinge will go here. That's going to end up being like this. That's why those dots are there. And the same with this. These are going to end up going like that. So now I need to set up and cut this surface so that I got the width I want. And that's going to be a bear to hold. I haven't 100% figured out how I'm going to do that yet. And I may end up doing is just setting it up in here and setting up a sacrificial piece of something underneath my part so I don't hurt. Well, I didn't mean to do that. So I don't hurt my vise. That may be the best course of action. Actually put in another piece of channel lock of angle iron under that part, cut it, and that piece will become a sacrifice so that I don't hurt my my vise, which I don't want to. It's got nicks and dings in here, most of which I didn't put in there, so that's good. Okay, so now I'm going to have to mark that out, figure out how I want to cut it, how I want to hold it, and then begin to cut that with my cutoff wheel on my angle grinder and change my battery. So here is the angle iron setup, and this is my sacrificial piece. I'm going to have to be a little more careful because I don't want to cut all the way through this thing, so I got to do this 3 more times. So now I got to go set it up, mark it, and do this, and then I will be able to clean this up closer to what I actually want it to be. That mark is kind of a rough. I want to get it closer to that and finalize the exact width I want. This is just kind of a rough in at this first stage. I'm not really sure why this didn't occur to me earlier, but you see, I made both of these all of these a ½ inch. So it's a ½ inch from, you know, the thickness right there. But ½ inch plus ½ inch is 1 inch, and that's too wide for what I need. So I need to make these considerably narrower. So I'm going to have to recut all of these. I'm going to try 2 of them first. I'm not going to try this set. I'll try this set first, see if I like it, because if I screw it up, I can maybe do something better with these and then remake those. But so we're going to go down to a ½ inch, and I think that's going to give me the distance I want for my project. So then I'm going to have to, once that is done, there is the layout for the holes for the hinges, and I also going to need a hole in the center of each of these because I'm going to be installing a bolt and a spring and a nut so that you can close them and open them, and you'll get resistance as you do that. So yeah, so I have to reset up my protective shield that I had here, and I discovered if I take the part like this and I don't lay it flat, if I do that, the vise is still quite strong enough to hold that in place without it moving, and I can cut it without having to be concerned about it shifting. But by having it up above the sacrificial piece, it still protected my vise, and the piece would just drop off. So that would give me a much better feel for when the piece was free, because it would just fall onto this. So that was a better setup. So that's what I did on the other 3 pieces that I had cut. So I didn't actually I don't think I made any more nicks in this at all, but again, it's just a sacrificial piece at the moment. I really don't think I have any massive need for this at the moment, but you never know. I always find interesting tidbits to use. So okay, set this back up, reset this, and recut these 2 pieces and see if I like the ½ inch, they'll add up to 1 inch. But I also have to make sure that after I install my hinge, I want to get those 2 faces, the 2 faces that touch, to be parallel. So at the moment, obviously, they are not parallel because they're coming together at an angle. So once I get the hinge installed and I know how everything fits, then I'm going to want to grind those flat so that they do in fact come to a parallel, or very close to a parallel. We're not talking heart valves here, so I got some wiggle room. Alrighty, so let's do some more layout and do some more cutting. ½ inch is definitely the way to go. So that is now roughly a ½ inch. I didn't measure it after I made the mark, but I just made sure that the 2 jaws are roughly the same width. I just did it by touch, just put them next to each other, ran my finger over it till they were close enough for my taste. I got lucky on these ones. These came out exactly already. I had to take one of those and polish it down a bit. So now I'm going to make hinges out of this. So what I want to do is I want to lay it out so that I have a hinge section that's going to be narrower than this, but not by much. So what I'm going to do is I'll use this piece itself to mark out where I want it, and then I'll cut on the inside, and that will make the hinge section just a little bit narrower than that, because I don't want it any narrower than I have to. I want it just inside the dimensions of the each half of the clamp shell, essentially. And that will give me a nice clean piece of metal to work with, so I can lay out holes. Because what I'm going to end up having to do is I'm going to end up having to put a 1/4-inch hole on both of these jaws in the middle. And I'll be coming off of this measurement here, off of this, which is a virgin material, so that distance will be the same on both jaws. And as far as the center, I'm going to try to do my best to get it in the middle of each jaw. That's very kind of important for me. So I need them to line up. And because even though I may end up having to open up one of the other holes later, we'll see about that. I don't know how it's going to work yet. So we're going to go with 1/4 inch on that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to cut the sections. I'll drill the 4 holes, and when it comes time to finally get them all bolted together, I'm going to have to drill out the 1/4-inch hole through the hinge later. But I'll have the hole in here as a guide at that point. So at that point, I can't screw up that hole. The big layout problem is going to be figuring out where I want those 2 rivets to go, because I need 2 to go this way and 2 to go that way, so you end up with an X. I also need to figure out how much of the head of the rivet is going to be showing proud of the inside of the jaw, because I have to make sure I compensate for making sure that the hinges will close completely. So if the head of the rivet is sticking out a lot, I need to make sure I make that far enough in that there will be space for it to come to a complete contact without interfering with the rivet itself. Obviously, if I need to, I can't polish off a small amount of the rivet without interfering with its ability to actually hold things together. But I can't take too much off, because otherwise the rivet fails. So I'm going to lay this out now, start cutting this up. I got this as a large piece of piano hinge. I don't actually remember where I got this from. I know I bought it for a project, but I can't remember what that project is now. But it was a long time ago. I've had this piece of piano hinge forever. So we're going to let it have a new life as the hinge on my clamp. So here we have 2 nice clean hinges, and we have a couple of small pieces left over from the process, which are still fully functional. I have no idea what I'm going to do with them yet, but I can do something. So now I want to put the holes in the center of these pieces, and I'm keeping these as sets. So that's a set, and this is a set. Just in case there is a variation, I want to make sure that I'm using the same pieces for the same parts. It'll make my life easier in the long run. And I did succeed in grinding a hole through my knuckle, so this pair of gloves is now dead. Thankfully, I've got backups. Yep. So now it's time for layout and punching a hole, and then figure out how the heck I'm going to hold this in place while I drill a hole in it, because it's a really small piece, and the reason I didn't drill a hole while it was attached to the bigger piece is there's like no way to get the layout right. You just can't do it. I've tried it. It's much easier to get the thing to the size you want, and then find the middle and find your location and drill it. Just to kind of have to figure out how the heck I'm going to hold it in place. I'm sure I'll figure it out. I'm a clever lad. Alright, so I have riveted something right here, just a test piece. This is a piece of just spanner plate, I guess. It's designed to be used for like joining beams together. You gotta buy them in strips, but I got a bigger piece over here. This kind of thing. And I just cut a piece down that I had it kicking around, because that hole is exactly the size I need, which is really darn convenient. Then I drilled a hole here, which is 9/64, which means the rivet goes through beautifully. And this sits proud 1/100,000ths of an inch, and the space I have between these 2 hinges, between these 2 jaws like this is what it's going to look like. I'm just obviously temporarily creating a clamp right now, is 200 thou. So I am golden. I can get those in there, and they are not going to interfere with each other at all. So I can go ahead and drill them as close as I want to get to either corner and not have a problem. That makes my life so much easier. I am very happy about that. So now I need to figure out exactly where I want it, because I want to make sure that I get get the head size, make sure it's fully on the hinge itself. I don't want it hanging over. And when I figure that out, I can then start marking the jaws, drilling 2 holes, do that for both of them, and then we can start the layout on 1/2. When I get to the layout for the other one, that's where it's going to get a little on the tricky side. Well, I have succeeded in getting 1/2 of this thing done. As you can see there, I'm going to still have to drill out that. Not to mention, I'm going to have to do some other work. One of these sides I'm going to have to make kind of oblong, and that will be something I do the last step of the process, because I need to make sure that it will allow the clamp to do this, and to do that on a bolt, it needs to have some space to move. The other side is going to be stationary, so I don't have to do that. I will be doing another procedure though, because I'm using a carriage bolt, so one of these holes has to be square. So I'm going to need to put corners in, 4 corners, and then put the bolt in there, and that will be where it lives permanently. The spring and the nut on the other side will hold it together. Now, the next stage is going to be the really profoundly trickiest one, which is, I can't just do that, drill holes. No, because I got to make sure that these are perfectly lined up with each other. This is going to be the tricky bit. Getting these perfectly lined up, or as close to perfectly lined up as I can get them, and then getting the hinge against here. I'll be using these to help with that, but I have to get that in place while doing this. So I'm going to have to hold this here. I'm thinking of using some of the wooden clamps I've got, because I can lay them flat on my bench, and I can even clamp them in place if I need to, and have them touch here, just here, keeping this face and keeping it square and keeping the face. That'll limit my amount of motion, and then finding a way, then lifting the hinge up and then clipping it in place very carefully, and then opening the thing up very carefully, and going to have to, once I do that, I'll have to take off one of these, because I need this not to be in my way. I need to have, I can't have it shaped like that. Having a shape like that, that's okay, as long as I get rid of one of them. But these things just snap right off and snap right back on, so that's not an issue. But yeah, that's gonna be the next stage, and it's gonna be a bear. And I'm not doing that today. I've done enough today already. I've shortened these things. I've got all the holes drilled as far as the jaws are, the main holes are. I got all the holes and the hinges done. So next time I come into my shop, probably next week, I'm going to work on that, because I want to be fresh. I want to be fresh for that one, because I don't want to have to tackle that when I'm tired. It's not going to be a good thing, and I am tired at the minute. Alrighty, so next time I come back to this project, it'll be seconds for you. We're going to work on this and this, bringing them together and getting them riveted, because I think the rivets look quite nice. I'm only going to use 8 of these things, but man, they are so much worth their weight in gold. As I am wont to do, I overthought a plate of beans. I don't need to clamp this in an elaborate manner to get them to line up. Do you know what I need to use? That. So what I did is I clamped this to here and then lined it up manually so that it was lined up the way I wanted to. Removed one of these so that it was not in the way of where I'm drilling. Just let the other one lie flat, you know, kind of like that. So it wasn't in my way. And then used this setup right here with my hold down clamp, which I got for $8 at Harbor Freight. This thing is worth its weight in gold. Clamped it in place, drilled a hole. I then riveted that hole. I could then remove this because I didn't need it anymore, then drilled the second one. I've discovered that while it is nice and lined up in this way, and on one side it's very even, on the other side it isn't so much. But seeing as these are not commercially produced, and I'm making these for someone, and I'm not charging them anything for them. I don't feel bad whatsoever about that particular misalignment, because when I'm done, they're still going to function, which is what they need to do. There's a little bit of side-to-side slop and a little bit of slop this way. However, once I get the fastener in place and everything, that will not be a problem. So now that that stage is done, I need to do the same thing to this one. And then I can get in there and open up these. I need to go through with the 1/4" hole and get rid of that piece of the hinge, which is in my way on both sides. And then I can start working on opening up one of the holes with a file so that I can get a square hole. So I need a square hole for the carriage bolt so that I can put the carriage bolt in, and the carriage bolt will not move, which is the beautiful thing about a carriage bolt. You put it into there in a square hole and it doesn't move, so that means you can tighten a bolt on the other side and everything's going to work for you the way you want to. Awesome. Okay, so next going to do this one, and then you'll have 2 hinges that'll look like that. Sorry about that. Oh, I got some real shop shoes. These are Avenger brand shop shoes. I picked these up at Savers for 12 bucks. They're brand new. I mean, so literally, the bottoms still have the fuzz on the threads, the rubber fuzz. They're not a perfect fit with the thin summer socks I have on right now, but with slightly thicker socks, they'll be perfect. And they have steel toes. They're closed, leather. Awesome. 12 bucks. They're like 108 bucks online. I'm so happy. And before the reveal, I'd like to introduce a couple of new pieces of equipment that I'm using today. This is an oil can. It is patent number 2595118. I don't have a brand name on the thing. I don't know why. But it was made in the US, and it's really nice. I have no idea what the oil in this thing is, but I can use it for drill bits when I'm cutting, and it means that I can get this really close to where I want it without my fingers getting anywhere near anything, which is a really nice feature. Paid next to nothing for that at an estate sale. And I got a pair of Wilcox W06 pliers, made in the USA as well. And again, I bought those together but with a bunch of other stuff, and I paid very little money for these things. And I purchased these things partly because I wanted to own something from this guy's shop. He had a massive shop. It was awesome. I couldn't afford or even need a lot of the equipment he had, but by gosh and by golly, I wanted to bring something home from his shop so that he knew his tools were still being used. Because I'm an animist, and I believe in the afterlife. So there you go. So here is the reveal. So these are the clamps that I have produced. They aren't perfect. That one for here is way too close to the edge, but it works. It holds everything in place. Of course, it's got 2 of them, so that helps a lot. I did polish down the insides so that they didn't interfere with the clamp closing, and I discovered I had to make those springs really short because it didn't occur to me that when they're compressed, which I can't do with one hand, sorry, when they're compressed, they have to not be too big to keep the jaws from closing. So yeah, I ended up the first one I clip off and I'd grind some off, try it. I'd grind some off and try it. At least for the second one, I was almost perfect the first time because now I had an idea of how short I had to make the things. But these things were pivotal in my build, and I was able to use these 2 files here, this square one and this round one. The square one to make the seating for the carriage bolt, and the round one to make an oval slot so this can now open and close the way it should. And frankly, I should have really made these holes bigger than 1/4 inch. I'm just so used to using 1/4 inch bolts to hold things together. I really didn't take into account that I needed to have parts that were going to be slightly larger so that it would mean less work for me later. If I'd made these things like, instead of 250, like 280, which I think is a 9/64 or something like that, my life would have been a whole lot easier. It would have just made things so much smoother. But, live and learn. Next time I have to make something that's going to have motion, maybe I'll remember that. But I'm never making a pair of these again. These are just for a friend. These are one-offs. I don't know if they're going to be applicable for the use that my friend requested. Maybe they work great. Maybe they don't work great. But I'm done. I'm finished. I don't want to be dealing with these anymore. So, thank you for being here for this build. I really appreciate it. And I hope you come back for the next one. If you don't follow me on Instagram and DeviantArt, you should. Though these are not going to... Do I put these on DeviantArt? I'm not sure. I mean, I built them, but they're not really art. Are they art? I'm not sure if they're art. But regardless, my weapons end up on DeviantArt, and on Instagram, I do take pictures of stuff that I build, bargains I find, salvage I get, things like that, as well as cute cat pictures. And who doesn't love a cute cat picture? So, thanks for being here. See you next time.